You ever catch yourself looking in the mirror and realize the person staring back at you needs you more than anybody else? Damn, she was me. Here I am standing in all my morning glory, looking like I've been through some things. As I turn to the side, sis, you done put on a little weight, ain't you? Your eyebrows cute and all, but it's about time for you to get your hair did. I carried on in this conversation with myself, judging the most intimate parts of my being. Like, girl, when was the last time you stopped and took a moment for yourself? It's given neglect and abandonment that little Nakia once got used to. But that ain't how I raised you. How is it possible that you've forgotten the most important person you should be taking care of is you? You pay every other bill that comes through this house monthly. You are more than worth the investment. You see, it's easy to put somebody else in the mirror and tell them what they need to fix. But to stand in the mirror of my life and look at myself has been the hardest thing to do. I stepped onto the scale and took a deep sigh, and I realized I wasn't alone. My eyes met with my reflection and then connected with another set of pretty brown eyes. It was her, standing about 5 feet tall with that dark brown silky skin, locks like mine but not quite as long. She's my Scoop and her dad's Sweet Pea. But as I look back into the mirror, it wasn't just lace. It was a caution clothed in my own reflection because she watches my every move. The last thing I need to be teaching her is how to not make herself a priority. And it was in that moment that I felt the weight how permanent parenting and my next move would be. I began to wonder if it was too late to change the narrative of her future story 12 years in, considering I'm just now beginning to change the narrative of my own story at this big age. All these years, I was out here acting like a real-life superhero. And if you're going to be a superhero, then you gotta know you're gonna be asked to do superhero things for everyone else but you. I know now that I'm not the only one who's ever been the quintessential omnipresent mom. Because that's what good moms do, right? It's a gold badge of honor. But do I really want to spend the rest of my life defending the titles I was gifted? I won't get a second chance at raising my kids. So I do what I know how to do. In other words, child, I'm just out here freestyling motherhood. And unfortunately, the baby books I ordered way back when weren't specific to the two that I carried. However, I know that one day my motherhood will outlive me, and it will live in my kids forever. I'm just hoping and praying that I don't become the villain in their stories. So I'm determined to tell my daughter more of what I needed to hear at her age. Because I remember when I was younger, I didn't always speak up for myself. There were times when I felt like my feelings weren't validated, let alone important. I now know the greatest disservice I had done for myself at that tender age was believing that was true. I don't know if I was experiencing the middle child syndrome or if it was a figment of my imagination. My older and younger siblings would probably say, girl, you tripping. I didn't realize how much this affected me until I showed up as an adult, avoiding conflict, having difficulty asking for help, having trouble describing my needs, and striving for perfection to bypass criticism. This behavior wasn't taking me anywhere far or fast. I used to think if I built a wall tall enough, then I wouldn't have to confront the emotional imbalances and unhealed wounds. Somehow they seem to climb over it anyway. Now, I'm listening to myself when I talk to my daughter. It became my mission to make sure she was minding all the things that would help her master the unconditional state of self-love before the world tries to tell her who she is. I want her to harness her speech as medicine and let her life be proof that it works, rather than suffer from emotional abandonment. But now that our cycles are overlapping, you know what I'm talking about. I don't care what research says, that shit syncs up. And when it does, I find I have second thoughts on just what to say. Out loud, that is. And especially when her PMS and my PMS are PMSing at the same damn time. But for real, who needs who? Remember that she in the mirror was me, and also her. For this middle-aged mom, the transitions of adulthood, womanhood, motherhood, and whatever other hood you can think of were getting heavy. I was feeling unfulfilled in my profession, and my contribution in that environment was lacking appreciation and purpose. Consequently, I decided to release the occupational hazards that contributed to my burnout. At this point, the mental fatigue was getting the best of me. It was like I had fallen into this dark well, and the walls were so slippery that I couldn't catch myself. Pain had its grip on me, and my body was beginning to reject me in ways that I wasn't understanding. Freak accidents were happening back to back, and it wasn't until I was home alone. And I felt the shortness in my breath, the tightness in my chest, and the ache in my heart. Those weren't just symptoms. My body was in survival mode, and my nervous system had forgot what safety felt like. For a moment, I wasn't able to do most things for myself, let alone everyone else. And the thought of this had me spiraling even more, feeling shame and disassociation. But it was her who told me that I needed to grieve the ideal of being in control. So one day I was sitting at the kitchen table, just scrolling through my phone, lost in the noise of opinions, celebration, and secondhand toxicity, and even comedy. And I heard my daughter outside on her deck. At first I thought, oh, she must be on FaceTime with one of her little friends. But her voice was so strong and certain. And it was a kind of confidence that made me stop mid-scroll. And I'm thinking, who could she be talking to? So I get up and peek through the blinds, and I leaned in, and I'm listening intently. And I discovered she was talking to herself. She was recording a message about the power of I am. Wait a minute, let me let that sink in for a minute. We're talking about someone who has yet to reach the peak of puberty, talking about manifesting. It was at the moment when she said, you can be in your 30s, in your 40s, and still say, I am. I felt that. And I instantly knew that message was for me. It wasn't time for me to give up or sit in self-pity, because the plans I had at 25 changed at 35, and lo and behold, were completely different at 45. It was time for me to fill in the blanks. And as I listened to her words flow, I realized I had been giving her exactly what I needed: the chance to speak life over my human experiences. This was my permission to pivot and to give grace to grow. And when I felt like the world was going to nowhere I wanted it to be, she reminded me to include myself in the list of superhero things I needed to do that day in a superhero way. It was time for me to stop clinging to who I thought I would be and make peace with who I was becoming. And as of right now, that peace is on Do Not Disturb. So the ending of that career, the friendships, and even the relationship that I had with negative self-talk, it wasn't a sign that things were falling apart. It was putting into perspective that things were actually coming together. And the bigger lesson that she gave me in that conversation with herself was that I am the love of my life, and no one's going to be more committed to me than me. And I'm more than overqualified to handle that. I spent too much time practicing putting myself second, so I decided that I'm breaking free of the ups and downs of conditional living and letting go of the people and things that aren't good for my greater good. And in time, clarity will sort out those who tolerate me versus those who celebrate me. And I'm okay with that. However, having a daughter is like having a compact mirror with you all the time. It's causing me to reframe the stories I'm telling myself every time I look at her, because my words to her are good enough for me. No more self-betrayal. It will be less of saying yes when I want to say no. No more silencing my feelings to keep the peace or ignoring my needs in fear of judgment. And I love that for me. Of course, there are different versions of me outside of being a mom. Well, actually, I'm the only version of myself, and I'm unclonable. I accept that my old self served a great purpose, however. But this mother-daughter relationship report card can sometimes sting. It's a role that I'm obligated to play all the time, but I seem to be getting something halfway right. So I stand here not just as a mother, but as a woman who remembers how I am because of her. I am the seed in her soil, and you get to see my garden grow and blossom into the essence that she is. I know for a fact my roots didn't think about the risk of exposing the branches of my truth. But somehow the wisdom I gained through pruning and nurturing me, it resides in the legacy of who she's becoming. She will be the hero of her story. And guess what? I still get to be the hero of mine. It's not her responsibility to take care of me while I'm going through my shit, but I sure appreciate her teaching me love and patience and consideration. So it's a wonderful time for me to rededicate myself to a new kind of love, knowing that I have given her what she needs to let her own light shine. So I'll be tapping into my supernatural magic, raising my frequency so that she sees the embodiment of transformation the next time we meet each other in the mirror. I know that when a woman is healed and whole, she's a better healer for her family. So I leave you with this. Are you minding what matters?